All right, guys, welcome back to Hill Report, presented by Tar Heel 24/7. I'm Jacob Turner. He's Andrew Jones. And AJ, it was supposed to be a bye week, man. It was supposed to be a bye week, AJ. Spent more time talking about football this week, despite the fact that ACC tip-off was earlier this week, despite the fact that Carolina had an open practice on Thursday for about 30 minutes and got to talk to Caleb Wilson and Jaden Young as well. The whole talk this week really has been dominated by the football team. It was supposed to be a bye week, man. How do you feel about that?
So I'm standing on the court in the Dean Dome, and the players were actually, I've never seen Carolina basketball late before, but I'm glad they were, because we were talking. We actually got more time to watch them too.
It must have been a good film session. They had film session before. They must have been watching something extra.
And they were having fun, because you saw when they came out, they were all laughing and smiling and stuff. We ended up getting to watch more of practice than we thought originally going in. And as we're waiting, we're standing on the court in the Smith Center. All anybody's talking about is football. So I go back to Tuesday. I'm at the Hilton in uptown Charlotte, and you've got everybody from, Joe Ovius, West Durham, all these all people that cover Georgia Tech and Syracuse and all these other schools and Virginia Tech. All they want to do is talk about Carolina football. I've never seen this before, even when Carolina football's actually been a really good story. Now it's just sort of the fascination of all fascinations, obviously. Yeah. This was supposed to be a bye week. It's not been a bye week. It's been very, very busy, very, very challenging in a lot of ways. And it's really been unfortunate. It's been uncomfortable at times for me, for us, for the conversations I've had with people, for things people have been telling me. Some of it's been extremely uncomfortable, Jacob. Yeah. I don't wake up in the morning saying, boy, how can I shovel dirt on somebody today? I don't enjoy that part of it. I enjoy the dig in the sense that when you pin your ears back and you're doing like really high-end kind of journalistic stuff, I enjoy that, because there's an element of it that there's a rush because you want to make sure you get stuff right. But at the same time, there are negative things going on, and that means that it's negatively impacting certain people. And I get no joy out of that. Mm-hmm. But you have to do the job. To me, if we could just wake up and talk and write about the football team and the basketball team and recruiting, that would be my personal utopia. And I think that's what fans want. But sometimes the circus comes to town, mm-hmm. and when it does, you can't avoid the smell of the elephants.
No.
And you can't, and that's kind of where we are. And I'm not saying these people are elephants, but I think
I know what you're saying.
Making. So the circus is here, and it is a circus. And I have empathy, honestly, for a lot of people right now, from people in the program that probably unknowingly created some of this. I have a ton of empathy for the players, because this is not their deal. And I have empathy for the people in the power structure, because they got hit with a tsunami this week. And because of it, stuff's changed. There's an outlet that might report, hey, this is going to happen. And then later in the day, it doesn't happen, but it doesn't mean they were wrong that morning. Just stuff changed. And we'll get into a little bit of it, but that's one of the reasons why we're backing off a little bit, taking the approach to back off for reasons I'll get into in a minute, because I'm not going to give you an 87-minute opening response. But there are reasons why it makes sense to back off now, and eventually football will be played, and they still have more than half the season left to play, which is probably the most shocking thing when you think about it, because it feels physically and mentally like we've been to the grind of an entire season already.
Yes.
And they've only played 5 games.
It's been just like you said, a whirlwind season so far, and really encapsulated in a whirlwind week, like you've mentioned. I'm not going to go through all the specifics of everything, but I just want to give just a quick, kind of summary of the things that have come out. Keep in mind, everything essentially that I am about to tell you, and we're going to talk about this more later on in the show, has nothing really to do with the on-field actual product that Carolina has put out this year, which has been absolutely atrocious. And I think Carolina fans can agree with that. Blown out by 3 Power 4 teams, not looking very convincing against a Charlotte team who very well might not win a game the rest of the season. And, played well against Richmond, but it wasn't some amazing performance. And again, that is a team at a lower level. So everything that I'm going to go through right now is really more off the field distractions that I think this program is just, not really the program, but the university probably is just desperate to quiet down. So Monday,
or to figure out.
That's a good way to put it.
Let me sidebar very quickly. Mm-hmm. Desperate to find a common meeting point.
Yes.
You understand what I'm saying?
That's a good way to put it. Yes.
They're not there right now.
Yes. I think in an ideal world for everybody involved, a lot of the stuff that kind of came out this week doesn't come out and doesn't because it's not happening in the first place. But again, I'm going to go through it just real quickly, kind of run through everything that went down. So going back to Monday, you had the thing that came out. Drake made big performance against the Bills and a win on Sunday. And then it comes out on kind of Monday morning, essentially, that Carolina's social team, this is straight from kind of the top here, was directed not to post anything about it because Drake May played for the Patriots. Keep in mind, this comes a few weeks after the news kind of came out that the Patriot scouts were banned from UNC facilities. That was quickly reversed. You put an article out on Monday from, pressure within is what I think you kind of to directly quote you there. That was reversed. And then you saw the program again tweeting about Drake May and stuff like that. So that was where kind of the week started. That
was hysteria.
Yes.
And then it became just, oh yeah, remember that?
Yeah, it's that feels like almost a month ago now because of everything else that has come out this week. It does not feel like that was earlier this week. It just doesn't. A few days ago, essentially. It doesn't feel like that because of everything else I'm really about to illustrate.
Yet that was hysteria, and that was national news. That story alone was national news.
It was everywhere. It was absolutely everywhere. It was the talk of sports.
But it kicked open the floodgates.
Yes, that is a fantastic way to put it. It kind of set the tone for how the week was going to play out. And then also on Monday, you had WRAL's report come out, which, a lot of interesting stuff in there, and kind of talked about some of the inner turmoil going on in the program, some of the, maybe lack of harmony within the football facility from players to parents to coaches. I'm not going to go and summarize that article. Most people have probably already seen it, but you can go check it out. But that was kind of something else that came out later on Monday and definitely trickled into the rest of the week. Now, Tuesday, big news was a Hulu documentary being canceled. I think we had all kind of known based on the product that was on the field and a lot of other stuff that was coming out of the program that we've been jokingly saying, I don't know if this Hulu documentary is going to see the light of day. I don't know why Carolina in the football program would want it to. And that broke on Tuesday. So that was another kind of off the field thing that was being reported about the program. Wednesday is really, in my opinion, when things started heating up. And that's where I want to kind of take this conversation moving forward. It starts with us. I mean, we put out and you more specifically put out a report about Carolina exploring, to quote you, exploring potential, keyword potential, exit strategies for Belichick. There was a lot of also other things in there that we can discuss, but maybe we don't. I think a lot of people have seen that report by now, but it all kind of encapsulated in that report coming out about where Carolina was on Wednesday, not only from a maybe athletic department perspective, but from a football program perspective as well. And then that evening, AJ, later that evening, Carolina puts out, along with Belichick and Bubba Cunningham, put out a, 2 statements, 25 words, basically reiterating their commitment from Belichick's perspective, continuing this thing, and then Bubba Cunningham backing him and saying, they continue with this project. So keep in mind, AJ, everything that I just laid out happened within essentially a 72-hour period. None of it had anything to do with the on-the-field product, which, again, we're going to talk about a little bit later. So that kind of summarizes the whirlwind week, and I think we can pick off by talking about where things stand right now as the week is coming to an end. So I don't know where you want to kind of take that, AJ. I don't know if you want to provide some context on the report that you put out, because it's something we have not really spoken on at least our platform before, besides on the message board. So I'm going to kick it to you real quick, and feel free to kind of take it wherever you want to take it, and we'll just continue this conversation.
Well, I've extensively been involved on our boards, the VIP boards on our site, which is part of why it makes sense to be a member. Not only that, but I get to read what people say, and some people have challenged things. Some people don't like the reporting. They don't like they don't like negative reporting. I'm going to emphasize the word potential. That gets kind of lost sometimes when things start getting pushed out and pushed out and pushed out. Sometimes words get trimmed. Potential. And let me also say that, of course, anybody in that situation would look at potential everything, because to put very succinctly and very quickly, imagine being in the power structure, whether you're right there in the middle of it or if you're secondary. And I'm going to get to that in a second about secondary stuff. You've got piles of stuff that are getting larger and larger heaped in front of you. Well, you have to sift through it and comb through it. And you're doing it why? You're not doing it to find reasons to justify keeping somebody. You're not doing it for the sole purpose of getting rid of somebody, but you have the potential for a lot of things. And as I mentioned a little bit ago, things have been said that sometimes sources alter later because the course changes. And that's what happens when you get hit with a tsunami. You know, a tsunami comes aboard and just whoosh, and then it has to recede. And when it recedes, it pulls stuff back, right? When a hurricane comes, you got time. I've been in 5 hurricanes, you know, folks down in Wilmington. The house my parents owned in Wilmington, in the garage, it had numbered boards that you knew what windows they went to. And I went and I hammered all the boards up all the windows when a massive hurricane was coming back in the early 2000s. You have time to prepare. Excuse me. This was a tsunami. They got hit with it, and lots of heads were spinning. Lots of things were said. And I think the dust has settled a little bit there. And part of it is, I don't know what other media is doing. I know that in talking to a couple of the really good sources that I have that are better than maybe second tier sources, I said, look, we're going to pull back. Because we got to be it reached a point where it was frenzy like, where I started questioning not motives, but I guess sort of motives. There's such a thing called wishful sourcing. And there's a thing called wishful reporting, which doesn't come up very often, but it is now. Sometimes when there's a tragedy, you see a lot of wishful sourcing and reporting because one side wants to blame the other.
Yeah.
And there's no basis to it. We kind of reached a point a couple of days ago here this week, in the middle of this week, where I started getting the sense that there was some wishful stuff being pushed. I saw the report about Belichick was discussing a buyout. We debunked that immediately. We debunked, what was it? I don't know, Wednesday morning that he was fired.
Yeah.
We debunked a lot of stuff. And there's also a lot of other things reported out there about locker room incidents and stuff coaches were saying. We never reported any of that because I never heard it. Mm-hmm. So even though it was out there, and I think there's some really good media that's had different stuff than we've had, and that doesn't mean that they were wrong or we were wrong. We don't always have the same sources. Sometimes you don't always have the same conversations. I wasn't looking for dirt. I want to know what was up. And how can you put Belichick in front of the media again with everything that's going on? That was sort of my question, to find out where in the hell is this thing going? Because right now, it when you flush and there's the spider,
yeah,
and he's struggling, eventually he goes down. How do you avoid that? I mean, that's kind of where it seems like we were in the later end of the middle of the week. That's why you release a combined 25-word statement that has actually generated more ridicule than had they not released something. But they had to release something. Mm-hmm. So they did the right thing. They're getting pushback for it, but they did the right thing. What else are they going to say? There was no lathering. There was no love. It wasn't Snoopy licking Charlie Brown's face. It wasn't any of that.
No.
It was like, boom, something's going to get out there. Here we go. Let's exhale.
Yes.
Let's recalibrate. So that's where we are. Our position at Tar Heel 24/7 right now is I am laying off the sources.
Mm-hmm.
I'm giving them, they don't need to hear from me. They don't need to hear from you. They don't need to hear from Noah. They need to be able to sit down and do the job that they think they have to do. And the last thing that they need right now is for us poking around and putting stuff out there. So there probably won't be an update for a couple of days from us simply because I'm not going to seek it out. Now, it may seek me out, which a lot of this stuff is done, but I am going to be extremely cautious about whatever it is I hear, because I do think we've reached a point where there's wishful sourcing. What is wishful sourcing? People who kind of hear something and they want to think it's true, so they're going to lather it up a little bit and they're going to go tell somebody in the media.
Mm-hmm.
Well, once it gets lathered, it's no longer really a sourced item because it's not 100%.
Mm-hmm.
So you got to be careful. So I'd rather not have the story and not be wrong than have the story and be wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And already the stuff that we've reported this week, I'm fine with where it is. I've explained the use of the word potential. I've explained that, look, you're going to have conversations about where this thing might be headed. To me, that's potential. And one person in the room may read it differently than another person in the room. And that's why I think it's fair to allow the school to do what they got to do, allow the power structure to do what they got to do, because you got the I told you so's over here, and you got the egos over here. And I think that that's the next wave of the story, but I'm going to allow them the space to figure that out on their own.
And I think that's the right way to do it, for sure. And I want to end it with this, because I think this is something that's getting lost in this a little bit. And you mentioned a few minutes ago about the Carolina, and this was reported on Wednesday again, Carolina exploring potential exit strategies. And you said something along the lines of like, of course you would be. You'd be crazy almost not to, with where this thing has got to. Everything that I alluded to this week has been off the field stuff. Again, this was supposed to be a bye week. Everything that I just have listed here really has nothing to do with the on-field product. I want to ask people this.
By the way, let me jump in. I'm sorry. I know that people hate when I do this, and I don't like doing it. They're exploring other things too.
Mm-hmm.
Exploring, do we put out a statement? Exploring staying the course. Exploring this, exploring that. There are 1,000 reasons why.
Mm-hmm. So
it wasn't like that was the only discussion, but it was kind of siphoned off that way. So I'm sorry. Go back.
No, you're fine. That's you're providing more context. You're absolutely right about that. I want to ask you, and I want to ask everybody watching this one simple question. What is the only reason at the end of the day that Bill Belichick was hired to be the head football coach of the University of North Carolina? I'm gonna give it dead air for a few seconds to let people think about it. And AJ, if you want to answer it in a second, feel free. What is the only reason at the end of the day, no matter what, that Bill Belichick was hired to be the head coach here? What would your answer for that be, AJ?
Dubs.
Win football games.
Win games.
Win football games. AJ, if you go back to the podcast we did after Bill Belichick's hiring press conference, I stated the most Captain obvious thing of all time, but I stand by it because this is how I felt about it. If Bill Belichick comes in and he wins football games, he'll be a great hire. If Bill Belichick comes in and he doesn't win football games, he'll be a bad hire. So what has Bill Belichick done so far? We're 5 games in. Unconvincing, blown out against Power 4 teams. The product on the field is not good. And then you stack it up with all this other stuff. I went through 3 days of things. None of it really had anything to do with the on-the-field product. Banning Patriot scouts. The social team can't tweet about Drake May because he plays for the Patriots and Bill Belichick doesn't like him. You can go back and look at some of the other off-field distractions that we've talked about since Belichick was hired. We've always maintained, especially early on, it was not, a lot of this stuff, especially with Jordan, was kind of a non-story because it wasn't affecting the football team at the time. Kind of is that now. But a lot of the stuff that's come out really the past month or since the season started have been unnecessary off the field distractions that don't do anything for the team. But here's the problem, AJ. I think people could maybe deal with that a little bit better if Carolina was a good football team. The problem is you brought a guy in who is not putting a good product out in the field. You have a Carolina team right now that is fastly trending towards being one of, if not the worst teams in program history. but none of that is really being talked about. So you can talk about all this off-field stuff, and that plays a factor in the decision maker, because at the end of the day, I think if you asked anybody in the athletic department or anybody high up at Carolina, hey, would you rather have a lot of off-the-field stuff come out every week or maybe just nothing? I think we know what the answer would be. I think people could deal with that, even fans to an extent, if the on-the-field product was good. The problem is you have all these off-field stuff going on. Oh, and by the way, the only reason he was brought here in the first place, he's not succeeding in that regard either. So it ends up in this storm where it's almost like you mentioned earlier, hitting the nail on the head. It would almost be crazier if Carolina didn't explore things, because where things sit right now, the Carolina football program, this is not what people signed up for. Fans and the people who made this decision in the first place. This is not what they signed up for, AJ. And guess what? Carolina hadn't even played its second ACC game of the year. They're only 5 games in. And I think that tells you exactly what you need to know about just the situation that has plagued this program really since the season starting. But you can even go back further than that. I just think this is not what people signed up for. And you'd be crazy not to look at some things and be like, are we moving in the right direction right now? Because it doesn't feel like things are.
You just mentioned that was kind of my column on Saturday.
Yeah.
After the game. That seems like that was eons ago. That was birthdays ago. Everybody watching this probably has a job or has had a job. And you've had coworkers that were just awful. They come in. I know a girl I grew up with, wonderful girl, wonderfully nice girl, but she was an awful employee. She was really cute and she was bubbly and she had great personality and she was the first person to hug someone, that kind of. And I really like her. She was a good friend, but I would never hire her.
Yeah.
Right. And she had this way where she could manipulate resumes and get jobs, and she would get these really cool jobs in DC and stuff. Right. And she'd find the hot, happy hour place those people went to, like Hey Penny Lion in DC, which if you're from DC, you know what Hey Penny Lion was. I went there with her before. And she'd be like, well, she's the life of the office. And 5 months later, she'd get fired every time because she was terrible at her job. She was great at creating this front. She was terrible at her job. I'm not saying that's what these guys did. My point is this. Anybody that's had a job before, you've had a coworker, somebody that's come in and they just bad the job. Well, this is a bad fit. It's not working. And in the real world, you get to cut the cord when you know it's not working and it's not going to work. For some reason in college sports, we can't cut the cord.
No.
We can't say, you know what, this has been a debacle. We need to save face. We need to shift course, even if it's a directionless course for a period. At least getting rid of this gets us closer to whatever's next. We don't do that in college sports. We're closer to doing it more now than we used to. Guys used to get 5 years. It was a hard count. 5 years. 5 years. It's not the case anymore, especially in the SEC. I think sometimes if it's just not working and it's obvious someone is not a fit, and it's obvious that they don't understand the climate of a program, and if there's an unwillingness to even try to understand some things, that to me is a massive, massive problem. And do you either continue marching for, is your loyalty more to a few egos? Is your loyalty more to a check that has to be written? Or is it to the millions of Carolina fans, and certainly ones in the region that buy tickets and buy the gear and help fund this program?
And show
Remember
up.
what we said the day, that same podcast you're talking about, he doesn't have a Robert Kraft to answer to, but he's got millions of fans to answer to now. And they're going to show up as empty seats when Virginia comes to town and when Duke comes down. Oh my gosh, Stanford. I mean, you could set off grenades in Kenan Stadium.
They'll be given.
No one's going to get hurt.
They'll be given.
No one's going to get hurt.
Yeah.
Yeah. At some point, when it's just obvious, why can't we cut ties? And I don't understand. Bill Belichick is the greatest NFL coach that's ever lived. I cringe when people just make that, well, he was nothing without Tom Brady. I do recall, I think a 13-9 or something like that, winning the Super Bowl. I recall great defenses.
Yeah.
You know, who the hell made Tom Brady?
Yeah, he deserves some credit for that.
Look at every other GM in the NFL passed on him at least 5 times, right?
Mm-hmm.
This guy took him and had the presence of mind to stick him in there and make it work. You know what he also did? He was the initial pro mentor of Lawrence Taylor, you talk about what a freaking task that was. Keeping that dude in line and teaching him. And Belichick had such a profound impact on LT's life. LT still shows up and swears by him.
Mm-hmm.
I know that there are things with Brady, but Tom Brady knows. You have the greatest quarterback of all time, the greatest defensive player of all time. This guy mentored both of them. If anybody else is LT's position coach, maybe he doesn't change the sport. Maybe he doesn't make left tackles gazillionaires.
Mm-hmm.
If there's somebody else and they view Tom. I remember a Virginia game they played at Michigan when Brady, I think, started. He was struggling. UVA was ahead in the big house, and Scott Dreisbach replaced him and led Michigan to a win.
I don't even know who Scott Dreisbach is, to be fair.
That's the point. I do, because I remember the game. So it was one of those week 0 type games. It wasn't called week 0 back then, which, by the way, can we get rid of week 0? It's week 1.
God, for the love of God, get rid of week 0.
It's week 1.
0 is literally nothing. 0 means nothing.
Week. It's an actual week. Anyway,
0 means nothing.
Different topic for a different day. But as a college coach, this has been a disaster because there are a lot of things you can't do as the 33rd. When you try to be a pro organization, you can't do. Some of the things I have heard, and some of it, what I've reported has been absolutely validated, is deplorable. In the NFL, you can jettison a guy. Adios, go. You can't do that in college in the same way. So there are a lot of communication things and other stuff that they do. Nobody cares about the nitpicking and how they make things difficult for the media. But remember, we are liaisons. And pro media, I've covered the NFL. I covered Panthers. I was there. Cam Newton's first practice, I covered it. There is an expectation in pro media of what you're not going to get. There's an expectation in college media of what you need to get because we are liaisons to all these other people. All right? And I just think there's been a lot of failures across the board. Then you look at the on-field product, like you said. The on-field product by itself, without the adjustments, is a massive red flag.
It's almost a fireable offense in itself because the product is not anywhere near where it should be for the investment that was put in.
I will admit, first of all, we're all wrong. Everybody's wrong about it.
We were so wrong about it.
I was wrong about it, and I accept that. And you cannot do what we do for a living without understanding. You've got to accept the fact that you can be wrong sometimes.
And let me add this too, AJ. I think that was 99% of the fan base too. You remember what it was like. People were believing that this, oh my God, this might actually work, and it just hasn't. It's been the exact opposite.
Nobody saw a Titanic moment every week.
No.
And what happens is when this team hits the Titanic during a game, and they fall into the sea, they don't know how to. They don't find life rafts or anything else, man. They don't know how to respond when things go bad fast. It unravels at an alarmingly fast rate. Mm-hmm. And you can see it in the body language and everything else. But the one thing that I remember, we did a podcast sometime before the TCU game, and I said one of the absolutes we would 100% see from the staff, we would see adjustments. There's no adjustments.
No.
I thought we would see better personnel. Gio's struggling. And nothing has changed. This team has completed 18 passes all season in which the ball has been thrown more than 10 yards past the line of scrimmage.
Mm-hmm.
So teams they're loading up, man. So they're going to stop the run. Hey, let's run another dive play. Let's run another dive play. Let's run another dive play. They've also had 14 possessions out of 49 full possessions. I'm not talking about possessions at end of half, in which they've gained more than 40 yards. 5 of those are mop-up duty. So have you seen changes? The only reason Max Johnson has played is because Gio Lopez got hurt.
Yep.
So the adjustments, you look down there, I'll have to go back and look, but I like to make jokes because, back in the old days, the splits. I remember going from a 2-foot split to a 3-foot split in the middle of the game because, hey, or 3 to a 2 because they're getting to the gaps. They're whatever, right? I don't even know if they're making adjustments there. It just doesn't look like they're
It doesn't look like it.
I think so. To me, I do think in some ways, if you really want to stretch it and possibly connect dots that we don't fully see yet, there could be a correlation to all this off-field chaos with the on-field chaos, because chaos breeds chaos.
Yeah.
If you're really disorganized and not following any kind of blueprint over here, then it shouldn't be a huge surprise. It looks like there's not one over here.
Yes.
But that would be to say that there's a game plan. I do think there's a game plan. I think they feel like they're prepared each game, but I don't see the adjustments. The messaging, I mean, Lombardi comes out with that email about the rebuild, and we hit back on it hard on this site, on a written article that I did, on a podcast you and I did, and we took some grief for it. But you go to Saturday against Clemson, Dabo could have named the score, and he didn't, because he respects Belichick.
Easily.
And probably respects the kids on the other side of the field. I'm not so sure the coaches they have the rest of the way are going to feel the same way. They have different, like Justin Wilcox has got coached for his job. He's got to clobber Carolina, right?
If he can put 60 up on him, he's going to put 60 up on him.
If he's got the loss to San Diego State, the home debacle against Duke, and then a modest win over North Carolina, that's going to hurt him.
Mm-hmm.
He needs to pound them, right? So you've got a situation where, try to be kind here.
Nothing's working.
Nothing's working. And you've got, going back to the Clemson game, if you're really in a rebuild, Carolina ran 64 offensive plays Saturday. They had 6 players play the entire game, all 64 snaps. Not one of them has any eligibility remaining.
And that's why the rebuild stuff doesn't make any sense.
And I asked Bill, and because of that, I asked Bill after the game about it. He didn't go there. So the head coach is not going rebuild, because if he would have said yes, then I would say, well, why were they in the game?
Mm-hmm.
So the messaging doesn't match other stuff. It's just almost like there's just helter-skelter in a lot of different areas. And I would imagine the power structure is going over all kinds of different things, because if you look at it strictly from a football perspective, wow, this is not working. It doesn't look like it's heading the right direction. Okay, well, recruiting's going well. They've got 36 commits. They started the week with 37. They reached out to commits this week, and they're trying to kind of rally everybody, get everybody on the same page again. But it's not like all 36 of these kids are 4 stars. Recruiting rankings for a class is an accumulation of numbers and points, right? Rhode Island could bring in 80 commits and have a higher rated class in Alabama because of the volume of commits and the points that racks up in the ranking system. It takes 10 minutes to figure out the ranking system, even if that. But they do have a lot of nice players in the class. So, but when are those guys going to help? Freshmen generally don't help in football.
Yeah, that doesn't happen a lot in college football.
So it's 2027 by the time a percentage of those guys get on the field, and Belichick's 75 years old. So it doesn't match up. None of this stuff matches up. The messaging is off. It looks like the in-game adjustments are off. It looks like the climate off the field in so many areas is off. And that's why this is a massive job for the power structure. And it's one of the reasons why I'm pulling back. Mm-hmm. I told somebody, one of my sources, and someone whom I know and respect tremendously, I said the other day, so look, the last thing you need is for people like me in my profession to constantly put stuff out there that just dumps more crap on your lap. At some point, they got to sit down and say, okay, this is the room. This is what's in the room. Let's go through it. Let's figure out where we are.
Yeah.
Because you don't want them shooting from the hip and acting rash. And some people were saying they got to just get rid of them now. And if they really want to be an SEC school, just fire them now. I think at least Carolina fans should feel pretty good about the fact that there is some patience in this process that's being exercised right now. Now, part of it, I think, is because there's the I told you so, and there's the hunkered down ego. That's part of it.
You don't think that doesn't play a factor for a
But
second.
there's a lot of other things that play. And quite frankly, you can't hire the next coach right now anyway. And when people say, oh, you get a head start on the next coach, how much of a head start do you really get?
Yeah, the new coach isn't coming to the end of the season.
Yeah. So, look, they had an opportunity to hire a really good coach last year. And they had that opportunity by not getting rid of Mac after the JMU game, by letting it play out. So that opportunity was still there. And I think now it might be a little bit easier to hire a good coach to take your time because you're not going to have the portal open in December. So there was a lot of chaos then. And in fairness to the current staff, they didn't get in until the portal had been open for a couple of weeks. So they were way behind.
But they still chose to bring in 7 new players. That was on them. That was them. They didn't have to do that.
And they chose to move out MAC guys.
They didn't have to do that.
There are MAC guys on other big-time teams and other big programs that could help this team that aren't there because of some of this crap, which I would think that when the story's all said and done and told, it's going to have it's sort of like like when they figure out something's arson, like something burns and it's arson, they can find the starting point. I think that the starting point will be somewhere and they'll start to see where everything unraveled from there.
Yeah. And I'll end it with this. Sometimes, and this doesn't only apply to sports. This applies to life in general, relationships and anything you're involved in. Sometimes things just don't work like you thought they might. Sometimes things just don't work out. And this just feels like one of those situations where, because I can't sit here and really point to anything, any evidence that suggests this is going to turn around or be fixed, or, they're in the dark tunnel right now, but there's a small light at the end of it that I can see that they're going to reach. Everything's going to be fine. If I was to sit here and give you and say, here's what I think might happen and try to be as positive as I can, all of that would be based solely on speculation and guessing and what could potentially happen. If I switched to the flip side and said, hey, let's look and see why this is not working out, and let's look and see all the reasons this probably isn't going to come, the things are not going to work out with Belichick like the administration wanted it to when they hired him, there would be a lot more actual tangible evidence that I could point to say, hey, it just doesn't seem like this was a good fit, and it doesn't seem like this thing's going to work out. And I think that is where Carolina is right now. And that's why, as we've alluded to in here, I don't think it should be of any surprise to anyone when you look at the entire body of evidence, AJ, that there might be some people within the UNC athletic department, administration as a whole, that were kind of talking this week like, do we need to explore some things? I don't think that should be of a surprise to anybody when you look at the whole context of the situation.
The most unfortunate thing here, and shame on us for not saying this earlier, there are a lot of players in this team that didn't ask for this. And these guys have a small window of opportunity to play the sport at this level. And for a lot of them, it's the last time they're ever going to play. Football is one of those things that when you take the pads off for the last time, there is so much finality to that. If you're a baseball player, you can still go to the batting cage. You can still go shag fly balls somewhere. If you're a basketball player, you can play in a men's league and go shoot around. In football, you can't go put on equipment, go to the mall, and run somebody over.
You don't really play pickup football that much.
You don't do that. There is such an unfortunate finality. And anyone that ever played the game, anyone that ever played football at a decent level, from like the high school level on, I would think, you kind of wish they could just one more time put on the pads and just run somebody over, just trash somebody. Because that's part of the thrill of playing the game. And you can't do it. And for a lot of these guys, their final football experiences are going to be in this mess. So for that, there's 7 more games to play. It would be a really cool story for these kids if they can get some wins. And they could have a positive final football experience. For the ones that still have more time left after this year, again, it's a small window of opportunity. And it's the last window of opportunity that 98% of these guys are ever going to have. Mm-hmm. And it's really unfortunate that they're not even the story. And it's not their fault. It's the fault of other people. But I do think as media, that's sort of how I'm going to look at these last games, starting with Cal when I go to Berkeley next week. There's an opportunity for them to win a football game. And nothing Nothing can cure an ill more than winning a game.
Oh, God, man. Would it ever?
And in football, it's hard to win football games. I saw a thread on our board. I haven't opened it yet. Said, how hard is it to hire the right coach? It's really hard. I maintain and always will that hitting a baseball is the hardest thing to do in sports. Watching Shohei Ohtani get mowed down by somebody in 3 pitches is living proof.
Yeah.
Right. But I think maybe the next hardest thing is to hire the right coach. Because almost every coach that gets hired at a power program gets fired. I mean, even a guy like Mike Gundy, who played at Oklahoma State, led them to incredible highs, gets axed in the middle of the season.
Yeah.
Very few coaches get hired and leave on their own terms.
99, I would say 99% of them, you don't go out on your own terms. You know what I mean?
They all get fired.
Yeah.
So it's really hard to hire the right coach. It is, I think a lot of the time it's luck. My brother is an Indiana grad, loves Indiana and Carolina football. He's a huge Carolina fan, and he's all about Curt Cignetti. But I guarantee you that until the Hoosiers were about 4-0 last year, he was just kind of, we'll see what this Cignetti guy does. He brought all these JMU guys. I remember he brought all these JMU guys with him. Well, they're pretty good. And they got a massive opportunity this weekend to really take a giant step forward as a program. I think every school in the country outside of about 9 or 10 would embrace the Curt Cignetti Indiana experience. And that was a terrible program. They had a good year under Tom Allen, but generally speaking, they had some good teams under Bill Mallory back in the late 80s, early 90s. But historically, it's a rotten program, one of the worst in the country. And now look at them. So it can happen, but there's no way you could tell me that the AD at Indiana, when they hired Cignetti, looked around, lit a red Arback cigar and said, well, now we got it. We're going to the CFP. Not a damn person in Bloomington that said that.
No chance.
And there's also not a person in Chapel Hill that said this would be a colossal train wreck.
No.
I know that there are media that said it would be bad. I had a conversation with a highly respected columnist in the Triangle for 3 hours in Syracuse last February because we were stuck there because of snow, because for some reason the Syracuse airport has one de-icing machine. Which is probably the biggest story of the year, right? That doesn't make any sense.
That just seems pretty.
So he and I we had different flights, 3 hours, and I swear half of it was him telling me why it wasn't going to work. I saw him the other day, and I said, you're 100% right. But he never expressed it not working in the manner that it's not working.
Nobody thought 5 games in it would just be this colossal dumpster fire that it's been. And I don't think anybody predicted that, even him. You know what I mean? That's not what he meant.
He was right.
This could be a colossal disaster.
And I know that as much as he would probably like to take a victory lap, he's resisted.
Which is the right thing to do.
Nobody wants to be right about this because it goes back to what I said a few minutes ago. The ones who ultimately pay the price are the ones that carry the memories for the rest of their lives of what their college football playing experience was. And it sucks. Mm-hmm. You don't want to be one of those kids. And I feel for those kids and I feel for their family. I've talked to a lot of them. I feel for the families. I feel for those players for the most part because this is their window and it's closing fast.
Yeah.
And in the end, when everybody is in hysterics about all this stuff, they're kind of forgotten. Mm-hmm. There are a lot of good dudes in this team. There are a lot of guys that just want to play football. They want to get an education. They want to be a part of the team. They want to have that brotherhood thing because one of the things athletes miss the most is that brotherhood thing. And the brotherhood is fractured right now because there's just so much wrong.
Yeah, I think this is a good way to end it. It's not what. Really, at the end of the day, this is not what the administration signed up for. At the end of the day, this is not what the fans signed up for. But most importantly, if you
I don't think it's what Belichick signed up. It's not what Belichick signed up for.
I don't think it is either.
He's failed. Hold on. He's very quickly. I'm doing it again. I apologize.
Need to take the blame.
Demerit points for me. This isn't what he signed up for. It's not like he's doing this on purpose. He's in a tough spot too. I mean, this is a guy that won 6 Super Bowls, and he can't get a first down against Richmond.
It's ultimately his fault, though.
I understand that.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that he's still a dude, still human.
Yeah.
And he's still got twirlies going on. We all do at different times in life. So I'm even going to show him a little bit of grace, too, on this because I think we've reached a point, maybe that's the best approach. Let this thing play out. Let the decision makers make the decision. They don't need me. They don't need you. They don't need the other sites and the other media that cover Carolina to continue to pound the nail, because at some point the nail can only go so far.
Yeah.
Let the things play out. Let the people that are paid to make decisions make decisions. Mm-hmm. And we will chronicle it and we will comment on it. And when the time comes, then maybe we speak up and say, okay, this needs to happen.
Yeah.
But my position is I think we're wise to pull back for a while. So I interrupted you again. I apologize. I owe you.
You're good.
I owe you a meal on it. We'll do that at some point. So finish what you were saying. Apologies.
No, you're fine. I was just going to put a bow on it and wrap it up here. Like I said, it's just not what fans signed up for. It's not what the administration signed up for. Like you mentioned, it's a fair point. It's not really what Bill Belichick thought he was getting into, and the staff he brought with him thought he was getting into. But most importantly, and this is the number one thing I think we should leave with, because of that finite window, because these are guys that only have a certain amount of eligibility and could have gone anywhere else in the country for the most part, this is not what the players signed up for. Yeah. And I think we'll see how this thing plays out. There is a world where winning does solve everything in a lot of ways. I don't foresee this team winning a lot more football games this year, but we will continue to cover this team on a week-by-week, game-by-game basis, and we'll see how this thing shakes out. But
and if they do win some games, good for them.
Yeah, good for them if they do.
And we're right about why. That's the thing. I want to get back to covering football, dude.
It would be nice, wouldn't it?
I don't want to deal with the soap opera crap. I want to get back to football.
It's tiring.
I think Carolina fans have a lot to be optimistic about with basketball. We'll see how that plays out. I'm not going to go too high on what it could be. I'm not going to go too low. I think they have a chance to be good, and they're interesting, and there are a lot of really decent quality dudes and good interviews. So if you haven't looked at our interviews with the basketball players, please do. Caleb Wilson, off the charts. So there's a lot of other very positive things for the Carolina soul to feed on right now. Mm-hmm. Move away from some of this negativity after you watch this podcast.
Of course.
And watch college football this weekend. Enjoy it. And then we'll see what happens next Friday night in Berkeley. I will be there. The press conference after the game will be at about 2:15 Eastern Standard Time. I will head to the airport, and I will fly home. And hopefully getting home in time to watch the night Saturday college football games. How about that?
Yeah, I've been having nightmares about that 10:30 start since they announced it months ago. So, we're getting there.
You'll at least be here. I got to live it, man. I got to fly out.
Yeah, you do.
Now, unfortunately, I'm going out a little bit early, so I have a little bit of time, like a little buffer. But afterward, I got to get back. The same thing with Salt Lake City. In fact, the next 3 Fridays, I'm in Berkeley. I'm in Salt Lake City. Now, my flight coming back gets me to RDU without delays at 2:30 that Saturday. They play Virginia in football that day. So I'm hoping we get a night game so I can also cover that. And then the following Friday is Halloween, and they're in Syracuse. So I'll be up at the JMA Wireless Dome, which is sponsored and by a wireless Wi-Fi company, and it's got the worst Wi-Fi in the ACC.
Yeah, that is one of the very ironic parts about that arena name, isn't it?
So those tweets will be fired off that night.
Let them fly, man.
Every time I'm there in basketball, which was just 6 months ago, whatever, 7 months ago, I was there in basketball, firing off those wireless tweets.
Can't be any worse than the ACC tip-off Wi-Fi, but I'm not going to talk about that right now. So
I hope for everybody's sake there's some positive things, and those kids especially. Yes. That's the thing that really I started thinking about the last couple of days is, man, like, and I'm guilty of it too. I'm reporting stuff, and I'm not thinking way down there what those experiences are like, and I can only imagine what it's like to be those dudes.
Yeah. That's what gets lost in all this, man. It's unfortunate, but we'll see. Like I said, we're going to continue to cover this team. That's what we do here, and we're going to continue to write and report based on what they do and say, as we always have. So we'll see, man. We'll see. But yeah, we'll have another football show coming up next week. We'll do a basketball pod as well, so that'll roll out sometime, on Friday, I believe. So just stay tuned for all that. Like I said, basketball going on this week, so we're going to do our due diligence to talk about that as well. That'll be a lot more of a positive podcast, I think. But get involved in the comments. Let us know. Been a lot of chatter this week on our boards, on social media. Get involved below. What do you think is going to happen with this? How do you feel about how this situation's unfolded? We just want to hear from you guys as always. And make sure you head on over to TarHeal247.com, man. I mean, some absolutely fantastic reporting. I'm going to give AJ some praise. He'll never praise himself, but you've been killing it this week, AJ.
There's a 2-4.
Yeah, you can see it. It's a little dark, but you can see it. But AJ, I want to give AJ credit. I know he's not a pat himself on the back guy. It's the opposite of what he is. But you've been doing some fantastic work this week, man, and not sleeping a lot. But again, it pays off. I know you live for this kind of stuff. Not for how the situation played out, but reporting the way you have and trying to figure out what's going on for fans. You know,
I turned down a lot of opportunities to do some things because I don't want to be in the way of the story. It is not. I hate that. Yeah. I'm just, if we didn't have to have bylines, I'd be fine.
AJ, if you love that kind of stuff, you would have been on about 60 radio shows and God knows how many more TV segments the last couple of days.
I have one more TV thing because we're part of the CBS network, I'm going to be on the CBS pregame show. There's CBS, the sports network or whatever. I'm not sure what it is.
Probably CBS.
On Saturday morning. I kind of have to do that because we're part of the CBS network. And I don't know. It's not about me, man.
No.
It's not about you.
It's not about any of us.
We love the work, and we love the chase. We love the job. We love the work. I'm just talking to you. I know there's a lot of people out there, and I appreciate when people say nice things because they like the work we're doing. They appreciate the effort that goes into it. But we're not the story. The story are the coaches, the players, and all that stuff. We're just facilitators, man.
Yes.
That's our job, is to facilitate. That's why I say all the time, and I'll repeat it one last time, then we'll go. And I've talked to Noah about this a few times. I told this to you probably the day that I first talked to you. Our job is to write and talk about what they do on the fields and courts and what they say about it.
Yes.
And then unfortunately, some of the other stuff trickles in. We are obligated to look at those things. So hopefully the tsunami has receded. There will be no more. This thing gets finished out, and the people who have to make decisions will be armed with accurate information to make whatever decision they choose to make.
Yes, absolutely, man. I think that's a great way to put a bow on this thing and a great way to wrap this podcast up. Appreciate everybody that stuck with us. Appreciate everybody that's followed our work this week. Come on over and subscribe. Links in the description below. Great time to do so with all this stuff going on and with basketball season right around the corner. I mean, it's an absolutely fantastic time to be on our VIP boards because a lot of stuff that goes on there we do not talk about on podcasts because people pay their hard-earned money for that information. So if you want more of that kind of stuff, I get there's a paywall there, but we got to make a living. We got to run this site. We got to pay for travel. We got to pay for staff. All it goes back to the business, man. We can't do it for free. No business operates for free. That's just not how capitalism works, does it, AJ? So we appreciate everybody.
The next restaurant that serves free food all the time, to anybody, you let me know, and then I'll think about. We'll think about. We'll
think about giving it away. Yeah, we'll think
minimizing about the paywall, right?
Yeah,
that's funny. People say, "I'm not going to touch if it's behind a paywall." That's not fair. Okay, the shoes that are on your feet, did you pay for them or not?
Everything you own, you paid for pretty much. So again, I get frustrated when people say that too, but it's just the world we live in.
You can't do it. Yeah. Anyway, we're not.
It is what it is. We're gonna wrap this thing up.
We're gonna get tomatoes thrown at the screen now.
If we haven't already, right? Appreciate everybody watching, man. And make sure you like, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell, tell your friends about us. See y'all next time. Thanks.